On our broadcast tonight, storm track. Severe weather hammers the American southeast, a fatal line of powerful spring storms, and a long night ahead for some. Power struggle. The American prisoner being held by sea pirates mounts a failed escape attempt. The Navy's on the scene, but when will they get the upper hand? United in grief. This was the day they said farewell in Italy. And Pet Project, the victims of a bad economy that you don't always hear about, and how one woman is making a difference. Nightly News begins now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. Forecasters at the Weather Channel have actually been warning for days that this could happen. Today in the south, two air masses collided violently and there have been fatal results. Several tornadoes have touched down late today, some of them moving across land at over 50 miles an hour, the speed of some cars on the highway. Winds at the center of the storms, well over 100. Look at the storm system as it moved east. At one point, this covered parts of 10 states. In parts of the south, homes that were standing just this morning are now gone, and sadly, lives have been lost as well. It's one part of the rage of nature we're covering tonight. We want to begin with our own Ron Mott, framed against an angry sky tonight in Cartersville, Georgia. Ron, good evening.
Brian, good evening to you. Officials in Murfreesboro, Tennessee tonight are reporting 2 dead, including a 9-week-old child. Scores have been injured, 7 critically. It's been an awful day indeed. And now folks here in North Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina are all bracing for what promises to be a rough evening to come.
We've got a new touchdown, a new tornado report, and
more than one tornado was reported to have touched down in Murfreesboro, Tennessee this afternoon, turning neighborhoods into debris fields and leaving residents stunned. One image captured by a traffic camera, another on this home video. The damage was quick and extensive, with lightning and high winds and hail. This weather system made its first impact last night, just after dark. Residents of Mena in western Arkansas heard the warning sirens.
Path of destruction like you wouldn't believe.
Mena resident Craig Sanders said it all started with rain, then hail.
This huge hail shows up, and this roaring sound, it popped it like a plum. It burst in as it hit the wall, it burst those inner windows. The pressure was intense and just everything just went wham.
Authorities say high winds and hail the size of apples descended quickly, seriously damaging more than 100 homes and nearly a dozen businesses. Members of a charity group had just gathered at the local Masonic Lodge when the building took a direct hit. Lois O'Connor was inside and took cover.
And the walls fell this way and that way. I was probably in the safest spot in the whole building.
She walked away with just some minor scrapes, but another member just feet away was killed by falling debris. In all, 3 died here and more than 30 were injured.
Today we've got about 50 of our soldiers here in Mena on the ground. We're currently doing search and rescue operations door to door.
As the severe weather system moved north, a tornado destroyed 2 homes and knocked over power lines near Mannington. But in the debris, a surprise.
Poor babies.
Obviously, Brian, this is going to be a stormy night for a lot of folks here on the eastern side of the United States. Let's send it back to you.
Ron, thanks for your reporting. With the storm now on top of you, we urge you to get inside. We get more on the storm system, what we can expect from it, from Stephanie Abrams, who's on duty at the Weather Channel. And Stephanie, because this isn't Tornado Alley and it's kind of out of season, I heard you on the air today warning people with relatives in the south to call them and warn them this was coming.
And they're going to have to continue to do that, Brian. As you look at the current radar, that threat still exists anywhere from Kentucky all the way down to Alabama. So far, 17 reported tornadoes in 4 states. And unfortunately, I think we're going to add to that. Let's have a look at the forecast for places like Charlotte. The threat for tornadoes exists from 8 until midnight. Raleigh, 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. And Charleston, South Carolina, looks like in the wee hours of tomorrow morning is when we could have the threat for severe weather. So unfortunately, Brian, this has not finished yet, and it's going to continue at least through the early morning hours of tomorrow.
Stephanie Abrams with the Weather Channel in Atlanta. Stephanie, thanks for your great work all day as well. We now turn to Oklahoma, where the problem is fire. Awful, unstoppable fires that burned all night across an unfathomably large area of 100,000 acres, sweeping across the plains and through entire towns. Our own Jay Gray was out in it. He's with us from Midwest City, Oklahoma, a suburb of Oklahoma City that felt the full force of these fires. Jay, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. This is the kind of devastation that hundreds of families are coming home to this evening in Texas and Oklahoma. The beginning of a recovery here, even as strike teams continue to battle active wildfires in both states. It is the second day of hand-to-hand combat along the front lines in this firefight.
Two-story home has just went up in flames here.
Finally, winds calmed enough today to allow help from the air, and firefighters are making progress. But crews are still struggling with hotspots across Texas and Oklahoma, where investigators now say at least one of the fires started Thursday afternoon was intentionally set.
We haven't proved that there was malice, but we do know that the fire was intentionally set.
Fueled by dry spring grass and pushed by winds gusting nearly 70 miles an hour, the flames whipped across the prairie in waves, cresting at times more than 100 feet in the air, gutting some homes while sparing neighbors.
Smoke was so bad, you couldn't see.
More than 100 homes have been reduced to rubble and ash in Oklahoma. More than 100,000 acres scorched in Texas. So intense, NASA satellites captured images of the plume from space. But it's the images on the ground that are the most revealing.
It's surreal. You really can't believe that this is my house.
For so many, so much is gone.
I can't tell you how many pictures I had.
But in all this heart-wrenching destruction, there is hope.
God's going to work it out for us. I really believe it, and I know it.
It is a faith that has been severely tested but remains strong as survivors here begin what is sure to be a long and very difficult Easter weekend. Brian.
NBC's Jay Gray on duty in Oklahoma for us tonight. Jay, thanks. And now we turn overseas. The strange and big story we've been covering this week tonight. An American ship captain remains a hostage to pirates in a small boat with a lid on it in the waters off Somalia, the east coast of Africa. The boat is adrift. It's under no power of its own. It's bobbing in the water. The U.S. Navy is there, and now it's a standoff. The drama ratcheted up briefly today when the captain attempted to escape. Our latest from our Pentagon correspondent, Jim Miklaszewski, tonight. Jim, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. After first giving himself up as a hostage to protect his crew, Captain Richard Phillips showed us again today another side of his personal courage. Held hostage at sea for nearly 3 days, Captain David Phillips made a daring attempt to escape the pirates. It was almost midnight when Captain Phillips jumped from the rear hatch of the lifeboat and attempted to swim away. Almost immediately, one of the pirates fired one or more shots from an AK-47 at or near Phillips. It's not known if he was hit, but the pirates were seen pulling Phillips back into the boat, where the pirates have reportedly tied him up. The pirates claim Phillips is unharmed, but negotiators aboard the U.S. destroyer Bainbridge have not been able to talk to Captain Phillips by radio for more than a day. The lifeboat they're in is similar to this one, more like a capsule than a boat, and it can be closed up watertight, making an armed rescue mission almost impossible.
The chance of the hostage being killed in an assault is so high that the smartest and best move is to simply wait them out.
That was the tragic outcome today in the Gulf of Aden when French commandos launched an assault on a hijacked yacht. One hostage and 2 pirates were killed. But experts claim the pirates are really after only one thing: money.
The Somali pirates do not harm the hostages deliberately. They know that is their passport to the ransom.
The pirates holding Captain Phillips are demanding a $2 million ransom and safe passage back to Somalia. But it's unlikely their demands will be met.
The ultimate outcome here is for the pirates to give themselves up or die.
Yellow ribbons are springing up today all over Captain Phillips' hometown, Underhill, Vermont, praying for his safe return.
He's not just a face in the newspaper or on TV. He's your neighbor, your friend. So it really hits home.
U.S. forces are poised today in the Indian Ocean to take whatever action is necessary to free Captain Phillips. But it's the pirates' next move. And it's what they do next, Brian, that will determine the outcome and their fate.
Jim Miklaszewski on duty tonight at the Pentagon. Jim, thanks. And continuing overseas, we go to Iraq, where, as you know, after a relatively peaceful period, we got word today of an awful suicide bombing in Mosul. 5 American soldiers are among the dead, making it the single deadliest attack against U.S. troops in Iraq for more than a year. For more on this tonight, we're joined by our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. He's in Baghdad. And Richard, in addition to 5 American families getting the worst possible news Easter weekend, this has to be considered a military and strategic setback.
It does, Brian. Just this evening, President Obama was here in Baghdad calling on the Iraqi government to take more responsibility for security in this country. But violence is on the rise, not only in Mosul, but also in Fallujah and in Baquba. Today in Mosul, according to the Interior Ministry, a car bomb, a truck bomb packed with 2,000 pounds of explosive slammed into a police headquarters, not only killing those 5 American soldiers, but also killing 2 Iraqi policemen and wounding 60 others. According to a U.S. and Iraqi agreement, all American forces are supposed to be out of all Iraqi cities by the end of June, but instability in Mosul makes it increasingly unlikely that forces will be able to leave that city. Brian?
Richard Engel in Baghdad, where, of course, the president visited just days ago. We heard something of a change in tone from President Obama today on the economy, a more positive tone on where things are headed. More on that from our political director and chief White House correspondent, Chuck Todd. And Chuck, what went into this, do you think?
Well, Brian, one day after that we had the president's chief economic advisor saying that the recession may have hit bottom, the president seemed to take that optimism a step further.
What you're starting to see is glimmers of hope across the economy. Now, we have always been very cautious about prognosticating, and that's not going to change just because it's Easter. The economy is still under severe stress.
Now, Brian, what the White House will say is because of the $800 billion stimulus package, because of all the money they've thrown at the banks, that you're starting to feel the effects of it, and it's created somewhat of a soft landing. So even though the unemployment numbers are going to continue to get worse, they think that it's a way of at least creating a cushion where now their challenge is going to be explaining to America what the new normal is and that we're not going to have that crazy growth that we had over the last decade.
New normal is right. That's one way of putting it. Chuck Todd on the White House lawn for us tonight. Chuck, thanks. Controversy today at Arizona State University. President Obama is this year's commencement speaker, but this morning we learned ASU was not planning to give the president an honorary degree, which is more or less customary. A school spokesman told the student newspaper that President Obama wasn't being awarded a degree because his lifetime body of work was still ahead of him. But late today, the school revisited the decision, shall we say, and said the president will be appropriately honored when he visits. When our broadcast continues, along the way this Good Friday evening, an entire nation chooses one day to say goodbye after a tragedy. And later, making a difference by helping people care for their best friends during hard times. This week started with a devastating earthquake in central Italy. It shattered the small town of L'Aquila. It was a disaster that left hundreds of people dead, thousands of Italians homeless, and an entire nation in grief. Today, Good Friday, that nation was united in mourning. It was a day to come together, remember all that had been lost. Our own Martin Fletcher is there for us tonight.
Babies lay on their parents, a last embrace. Ludovica Centi was 6 months old. A favorite toy, unbearable pain. 205 coffins out of 289 victims of Italy's worst earthquake in 3 decades. It was a special Good Friday Mass. 5,000 people at a funeral service led by the second highest priest in the Vatican, Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone, and a message from the Pope. Share your anguish. They lost their loved ones, and these lost their homes. A tent camp for the homeless, true to the message from the Pope, who said, only solidarity will allow us to overcome this painful trial. Even the clown took time off. But as they buried the dead outside the TV tent, life went on. Marcia Chima couldn't watch the mass. She was looking after her 2 small children.
How are the children now?
The little one is too young to understand, she said. But Jacopo, the 3.5-year-old, was terrified. He asked, "Mummy, wasn't the house held together with glue?" "How is the house?" I asked. "It's okay," she said, "but I'm too scared to go there." So we said we'd take a look for her. But we couldn't find number 11 via San Sisto. Instead, we found neighbors who invited us in.
Prego.
Cynthia Angelino had been at the mass.
For me, it's the funeral of my city, all of my town.
The family of 8 all sleep in tents in their garden, get water from a cistern, and Grandma Bruna makes great coffee, but they're too scared to enter the house in case there's another earthquake. Behind the laughter is real fear. Well, at least we know where number 11 is. Apparently it's down here somewhere. Oh, number 11. This is number 11. The building isn't too bad, but the whole area is deserted. Prime Minister Berlusconi today called L'Aquila a ghost town. Engineers are checking when and if some people can go home. In the meantime, it's still Easter, and for the kids that means Easter eggs, chocolate and toys, and pushing aside the trauma of the night the house fell down. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, L'Aquila, Italy.
Tough story. We'll continue nightly news in a moment. We'll have a moment to remember, captured in a photograph at the White House. This has been the week for opening day celebrations at ballparks across this country. This year, the Detroit Tigers decided to pay tribute to the backbone of that city. And so 3 auto workers from the big 3, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, each threw out a ceremonial first pitch. The Tigers won big, by the way, 15-2 over the Texas Rangers. Because of the tough times in Detroit, GM, which these days depends on government money for its day-to-day survival, this week decided to auction off some pieces of history. The company's so-called legacy car collection. Indy 500 pace cars, cars that appeared in movies, one-of-a-kind cars, in short, the kinds of cars that car lovers paid big money for. GM didn't give an estimate for how much money the auction might bring in, but it runs through Sunday. Easily the most talked about piece of videotape of the day comes to us from Florida, where a Boynton Beach woman had the unnerving experience of logging into her home webcam from work and seeing burglars inside her house at that moment. She called 911 and was relaying to them what was happening to the operator, including live coverage of one of the intruders eating from a bag of shredded cheese in her refrigerator. She then got to watch with great satisfaction as cops entered with guns drawn and arrested the 2 men. At the White House, what may be the picture of the week. This is from the website, theroot.com. It was during some beautiful weather yesterday afternoon. Look at this couple, the president and his one-time bitter rival, his current Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, took their meeting outside to the picnic table near the Obama girls' new swing set in the backyard of the White House. And with speculation over the arrival of the Obama family's new dog reaching a fever pitch this day, this was all we got from the president today.
Thank you, sir. When's the dog coming? Oh, man, that's top secret. That's top secret. This is tightly held.
A tightly held secret, so the president stays on message, and the mystery continues now right into Easter weekend. When we come back this Friday night, our Making a Difference report, helping those who don't get a voice when times are hard. Of the emails our viewers have been posting on our website about this current economy have to do with pets, people who don't have the money to feed them or keep them, and people who are offering help to others free of charge. Our Making a Difference segment for this Friday night is about just that. It's about a woman in Washington State who has decided this will be her way to help others. Her story tonight from NBC's Chris Janzing.
Line starts here, it's going that direction. In sub-freezing temperatures, a small crowd gathers near the Gospel Mission in Spokane, some waiting for hours for a chance to see veterinarian Kathy Tucker.
Hi, Kathy. Hi there, Betsy.
Betsy Tan lives on a fixed income. A vet visit for her dog Rhea would be out of the question, except once a week. Dr. Tucker treats animals for free.
People like me, the senior citizens on low income, we're the ones that need pets more than anybody else.
For 11 years, Dr. Tucker has helped thousands of animals.
He's been in a fight, yeah.
It started as a program for the homeless, but as the economy soured, lines have gotten longer.
I'm seeing people that have been laid off from their jobs that are coming in, and that's kind of new.
Some pets are referred by the local Humane Society, where drop-offs are up 20%. The average vet bill in the U.S. is $135 for a dog, $112 for a cat. If you've lost your job or taken a pay cut, you may not be able to afford it anymore. Brody had to leave his family after 8 years because they just couldn't afford him.
He's got quite a scruff to his neck here.
In the course of a typical day, Dr. Tucker will give vaccinations.
It's a really bad idea to breed him.
Strongly advise owners to spay and neuter and mend injured animals.
Let's take a little feel here.
They're the most grateful people I've seen here because they love their animal, even sometimes beyond themselves.
You can hear why Tiffany Alexander named her puppy Mouth. She's worried because he hasn't had his shots.
That would mean my dog would get sick and probably die if they didn't have places like this.
Inevitably, there are more needy pets than hours to treat them.
We're probably not going to be able to see.
So they'll come back next week, and Dr. Tucker will be waiting.
You're next.
Chris Jansing, NBC News, Spokane.
And that's our broadcast for this Friday night and for this week. Thank you for being with us for all of it. I'm Brian Williams. Lester Holt will be here with you tomorrow night and this weekend. Have a good Easter weekend. Good night.